Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another Ghosts for Yang review. It's a beautiful day here in West Hollywood, and today we're going to be looking at Elizabeth Warren's This Fight Is Our Fight. Published in April 2017, shortly after Trump's inauguration, This Fight Is Our Fight is Warren's second book since entering politics. Her first book, called A Fighting Chance, sensing a pattern here, came out in 2014, shortly after she assumed her Senate seat. She also co-authored two financial literacy books in the early 2000s, The Two Income Trap and All Your Worth, with her daughter Amelia. Now, as always, I went into this book with a neutral eye. Yes, I am a Yang supporter, and that colors my opinion, but I approach all of these texts with an open mind. The key takeaways from this book. First, this is not a thorough autobiography. I suspect a lot of the territory that was covered in Warren's previous book was more on her personal life. That said, it still colors in details about Warren's past that help shape her perspectives on the present and the future. Second, Warren really did come from nothing and has a strong core desire to fight for the less fortunate in her bones. I think she feels it in her bones multiple times throughout this book. And third, the book is an excellent diagnosis of the middle class crisis, how workers have been squeezed and squeezed over the past few decades, leading to a desperation across our society. So, the opening scene is Warren and her family on the 2016 election night as they're toggling between coverage of the election and watching Ballers while Warren goes to get more beer from the fridge. Yes, I laughed at the beer line. Like, it's right there at the beginning of the book, watching Ballers and getting a beer. But hey, I'll buy it. The election night plays out as you would expect. She has a terrible feeling that most liberals did as Trump's election became real. We then flash back to 17-year-old Warren in a fight with her mother, who slaps Betsy, as she went when she was younger, for wanting to go to college. No one in her family has graduated college, and mom is suspicious of Betsy's desire to become a teacher. The family is very financially desperate, and Warren says that were it not for the minimum wage job that her mother got at Sears during this really, really desperate time, they would not have survived. A strong minimum wage is deeply personal for Warren, and she thinks this when she's in the Senate later and Senator Lamar Alexander says he's for eliminating a minimum wage. This attacks Warren personally. She grew up in a household where the minimum wage literally saved the floor from underneath them. And Warren's not wrong here. She grew up in a time before Reaganomics and other policies gutted the middle class, where her family, poor as they were, had a fighting chance. She makes reference to an economic boa constrictor that is squeezing middle class families so hard they can't even breathe. Middle class families are falling behind even when they've suffered no personal tragedy. An example that I'll cite is the 2018-2019 government shutdown, where full-time workers had to go on food stamps and government support after missing just 1 week of pay. Warren also, like Andrew Yang, calls out GDP and the unemployment rate for not being true indicators of citizens' health in today's economy. This is in keeping with Yang's idea for an American scorecard. Warren cites that with no money, people have no time. She's thinking about money as more than just cash in your pocket, but as the ultimate stress reliever, similar to Yang. Warren cites numerous cases of full-time workers like those at Walmart who are on welfare. Minimum wage used to pay enough of a floor that people didn't need taxpayer help. She also calls out how companies like Walmart deliberately overhire for positions, putting workers in competition for shifts and never having a predictable schedule. This is a very unfortunate practice. There was a famous New York Times article in 2014 on how Starbucks went about its scheduling, which I've linked below. My ex, for example, worked at a major theme park for a number of years, but was never in control of her schedule, to the point where she was fired after she'd been there for over 3 years because we decided to take a trip at Christmas, even though she gave plenty of notice. So Warren walks us through the numbers about how costs are way, way up for families in the present day. The fixed costs, education, healthcare, and the like, have skyrocketed to the point where planning the family budget is near impossible. We then get a little bit more of Warren's personal history. At 19, she gave up her scholarship to get married to Jim Warren, who she ultimately divorced 12 years later, though she kept the Warren last name. It just feels like it just felt like she could do one, marry this guy Jim Warren, or the other, keep her scholarship, but not both. I suspect many, many, many women at this time period felt like that was the choices that they had. I'm going to jump ahead here, but she later talks about graduating from Rutgers while 9 months pregnant. Warren was able to attend a commuter college for the equivalent of $300 in tuition in today's dollars. Now, that same school is $10,000. So she was in an arena where getting a further degree, even while 9 months pregnant, was very affordable. She still had to work her butt off, but she was able to do it. There's a massive gulf, I'm sure, as everyone knows, between $300 and $10,000 in terms of the cost of education. Warren cites the failure to invest in education as trickle-down economics at their ugliest. Back to her time in the Senate, she touches on some of her clashes with Obama. For the most part, broadly, she feels that the system is rigged against middle-class families. He doesn't necessarily see it completely that way. She also, like Yang, points out that Donald Trump understood people's anger, but she's quick to call him out. Trump isn't populism. He is, as she quotes, trickle-down economics on steroids. Warren has a lot of reverence for FDR and acknowledges how World War II pumped a lot of spending into the economy. Since the 30s, as our country got richer, our families got richer, though she does give a token acknowledgement that it didn't do enough to help minorities. But that all started to tilt eventually, getting us where we are today. The giant corporation consolidation that has happened across most major industries has really hurt us. Beer, beef, airlines, corn, entertainment, you name it. We might as well be dealing with monopolies in all of these major industries when it's 3 or 4 different corporations that suck out all of the life from the competition. This has damaged market competition, and with food in particular, leading to consumers paying more and farmers making less. Warren insists that financial regulations matter. The middle class has already paid dearly for the mistakes of Reaganomics, and she's a proponent of a modern Glass-Steagall Act, which she points out that both 2008 McCain and 2016 Trump were for as well. Warren ties in her time as a teacher to a lot of her lessons here. She discusses asking 5th grade kids things like, don't just think about what you give, think about what we owe each other. And a kid responds that everybody gets a turn. Warren is very pro-union and cites that unions actually grew during the Great Depression. This gets colored by an experience her first husband had, who was working as a manager at IBM. If he heard any employee mention a union, they had a one-breath rule. Within one breath, Warren's husband had to report the person talking about unionizing to a supervisor, squashing any attempt of the workers to gather. We get a lot of anger about politicians siding with billionaires and, quote, playing sugar daddy to banks during the bailout. The economy has changed who it works for thanks to the trickle-down lie. This section makes frequent references to Marie Antoinette. The future, Warren says, is coming fast, and we can't afford more policies that undercut working people. I don't disagree with her on this, but it got me thinking, are we in this state because of a few greedy people, or because of the inevitable behaviors of capitalism? Is it both? Money shapes perception, especially, Warren says, with politicians. I wonder what she thinks of Yang's democracy dollars idea. The American people deserve a government that's better than a training camp for those looking to cash in. Warren emphasizes trade deals ruining life for workers. Over 2 years in this book, before this was brought up in the October 2019 debate with Andrew Yang, and talks about workers getting screwed over by companies like Nabisco when they farm out way too many of their labor positions to foreign countries. She also discusses astroturf movements in politics, where special interests are able to shape the political dialogue and narrative. There's a big fear here, like Bernie Sanders, that we're becoming an oligarchy. She includes a talk from Michael Bloomberg about how the right vilifies Muslims and Mexicans, while the left vilifies Wall Street and billionaires, and Warren hates this false equivalency. And of course, we get the attacks on Trump. Warren points out that a quarter of the people who voted for Trump don't think he's fit to be president, and she calls out corporations to cite where they stand on bigotry. Like every Democrat, she rails against Citizens United for protecting corporate donations to candidates like Trump, though doesn't provide any data on how they may have benefited Democratic candidates as well. Warren says that America is now led by billionaires, banquets, and bigots. She closes with Trump on Inauguration Day, seeing protesters that called him a fascist and reflecting that this is the state of America, before closing on her experiences the next day during the Women's March. Now, call this savvy or call it dodging, either way, she's able to paint a picture of Trump as a fascist without directly calling him one herself. So what to make of this? To me, in this book, Elizabeth Warren comes across as an excellent fighter and leader for the middle class. Her accomplishments are remarkable, and the voice that she's given the people over her career should be championed. It is wonderful to have a leading presidential candidate fighting on behalf of workers. This is personal for her. She knows what it's like to be locked into wages with no power and what that can do to mental health, individuals, and families. What I don't get the sense is that she's a great persuader. Warren is a fighter, rolling up her sleeves and ready to take on Wall Street, corporations, Republicans, you name it. But I have doubts about how this approach will sway or convince people who aren't already on the liberal bandwagon. Her political history and this book in particular paint a picture of a straight line approach to her goals because of the morality of her agenda. I also think that Warren overestimates both the power and speed of the federal government in terms of how it can right these economic wrongs quickly. This book shows a trajectory that squeezed the middle class over the course of decades, and she plans to address this urgently. But as we saw with Obama, it can take a long time for the best of intentions to have any sort of measurable impact in the daily lives of normal people. So here's where I bring Yang in. Let's go back to Warren's story of her mother desperately getting a minimum wage job at Sears, and it allowing the family gradually to get back on their feet. If young Elizabeth Warren, or Betsy, lived in an America led by President Yang, they'd already be getting 2 universal basic incomes into their household from her parents, and with her brothers growing up into them. Maybe then young Betsy's college dreams aren't so frowned upon. Maybe the severe stress of the household is diminished. There's a quote from Lincoln, the movie. I don't know if he actually said it, but it goes like this. A compass will point you true north from where you are standing, but it's got no advice about the swamps and deserts and chasms you'll encounter along the way. If in pursuit of your destination you plunge ahead, heedless of obstacles, and achieve nothing more than to sink into a swamp, what's the use of knowing true north? I have no doubt that Warren knows true north, and she has many plans for how to get our country and our people there. She's a formidable senator and would be a formidable candidate. But even on the playing field of what she wants to accomplish, both in terms of defeating Trump and improving the lives of workers, I see Yang as the stronger and more effective way forward. So what do you think? Is Elizabeth Warren the best candidate running? Do you disagree with any of my assessment? The Yang Gang welcomes constructive discourse across the political spectrum. If you enjoyed this review, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. My review of Pete Buttigieg's book, Shortest Way Home, is on this channel as well. My next review, where we're going to feel the burn, should be up shortly. And as always, don't forget to vote. Make sure you're registered for the primaries, as some state deadlines are coming up fast. No matter who you're supporting, vote. The most powerful political party in our country is the non-voter, and our democracy doesn't work unless we participate in it. Thanks so much for watching, and see you next time when we'll feel the burn.